on anything is that brisket. That is why it's so hard. It's the absolute toughest muscle. Kansas, up in Nebraska, the Dakotas, you know what they do to brisket? Well, they used to. They don't do it anymore. They used to toss it out to the coyotes and the dogs because it was such a tough cut of meat. They could never figure out what to do with it. But what it does is it really works well for low and slow. That's what pit barbecuing is all about, low and slow. So we're talking pork butts, we're talking these really crappy cuts of meat, able to make them like into great fillets. We're able to do that with low and slow. We're able to do it because of the processes that take place. But we look at these baby backs. Now, what we're going to find in this class, I'm cooking spares on the smoker too. Guys, you're not going to go out of here hungry, believe. So we're going to have all kinds of hors d'oeuvres because I want you to taste it, I want you to touch it, I want you to smell it. That's what's important about this. Touching, smelling, seeing what the actual product is and how we got there. We're going to do step by step on how we got there. Okay? So we're talking about these baby backs. We see this fat grained out through here. Fat is what in barbecue? Fat is flavor. Fat is our friend. Okay? That's why Zocor sponsors me in all these contests here.
Built-in tenderizer too.
Huh? Yes, and we'll talk a little bit about that as those fats dissolve, what they do to the meat. Okay? But fat is good because it really abodes well to the low and slow cooking process. So, do we want it just over-grained out with fat? Absolutely not. But we want to leave the fat that's on there. We have some obnoxious fat, we'll trim them off. But it's a rarity that you'll see it in a baby back. So you see these baby backs, and we're starting to get into the season where they're starting to get fairly large now. The difference between a spare and a baby back, totally different texture, totally different cut. Every different cut has a different texture and a different taste, every different muscle. So we have a brisket now, we're cooking a full packer brisket. We're going to have two muscles. We're going to have a point, we're going to have a flat. So every one of them is going to have a different grain pattern, and it's going to have a different texture when you bite it and taste it. Pork butt, 7 different muscles. So what's that tell me about that pork butt? It's a lot of flavor in it. A lot of flavor in it. Okay? So when we take a look at this baby back rib, the first thing we're going to notice is this opaque piece on the back. And tell us what that is. Pleura? Yep. Basically what it is, it's pleura. I learned this from a doctor of all things. He told me about it. This is a pleura that sits down along the back side of this. And what it is, it's a membrane that doesn't allow the lung to stick. So it pushes it away. Okay? That's what the guys told me, the doctor told me.
Sounds right.
It sounds right? So what it does is, it does 2 different things to the rib. First of all, if you leave it on there, not strip it off, you cannot get any kind of flavor or any kind of taste into it. Okay? So there's absolutely no way. So when I'm talking about this, and you'll see this in the PowerPoint, the anatomy of a rib, we're trying to build flavor front and back. I will never be able to do it if I leave this pleura on here. Okay? Whether it be a spare, whether it be a baby back, it needs to come off. The next thing it is when I bite into that rib after it's cooked, if this is on there, guess what? Automatically cut. Because it will not cook up. It's going to be a very, very hard bite. So, let's take a rib now. When I pick up a rib, what's the first thing my tongue's going to hit? The back side. So if I don't prepare the back side, I can prepare the front side. Guess what? I automatically starting behind here. Okay? We want to prepare both sides identical. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to strip this pleura off. And it's very, very simple to do. Can you do it with catfish skinners? Absolutely. But it's just as easy to do with a fork and a paper towel. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the smallest bone. You're going to take it. You're basically going to lift the skin up, just like this. Danny, thank you. You're going to take it. You're just going to pull it down just like this. It's just going to strip it straight down just like this. Okay?
Never thought about that.
Now, look at that fat.
Ooh, yeah.
Fat is our friend. And guess what? The first thing my tongue's going to hit?
Your friend.
My friend. As you can tell, it's been very friendly to me. So, you see what we've done here? Just throw it away. We've opened up a whole nother layer of flavoring in here. Okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take our fork. I'm going to start between each rib, and I'm basically going to tenderize or start breaking the connective tissues down a little more. Between each rib, now do I do it a lot? No. I just break it down enough to where it's starting to break the connective tissues off the bone. Okay, this whole deal about low and slow is about connective tissues, getting them to dissolve, getting them to break down. That's going to give me my tenderness. But also what I'm doing here is I'm opening up pores. These pores will be able to absorb more smoke. They'll also be able to accept the rub better. So as I'm letting it dissolve down, the rub's dissolved, they're working it more and more into that smoke ring, that first initial flavor of that smoke ring. Okay? And you can see what I've done here. I mean, it's not a lot, but it actually helps a lot. Okay? But you can see, once we strip that membrane off, you see all that fat that we've opened up. That's all moisture, that's juice, that's flavor. Okay? So the next thing I do is I take mustard. Cheap, old, yellow mustard. Not Grey Poupon, not Honey Dijon. The cheapest mustard you can get. This isn't the cheapest you can get, but the cheapest yellow mustard you can get. And we're going to use it for two different reasons. The first reason we're going to make sure it's, I don't want to do the power open on it. Keith, can you? The first thing it does is, this is initial, when we talk about building the foundation, this is how we're going to build that great pit flavor foundation. We're going to use it with the mustard. So what's the mustard made of? It's got a lot of vinegar in it. That vinegar is a great tenderizer. Okay? The other thing it does is it builds that outside crust. So like the brisket that you saw out there, it has mustard on it. That's part of that foundation to build that crust. So I'm going to put a coat of mustard. Now, one thing to understand about the mustard is this. It will cook completely off and you will never taste it. But if I use Honey Dijon or Grey Poupon, you're going to taste it. You want to keep it away from it. You just want to use cheap, old yellow mustard. So when we're looking at it, you notice there's not a lot of it, but it's a very, very important part of starting to build that foundation. We're building that crust. We're building that pit flavor that we're looking to build. Okay? The next thing it is probably one of the most important things. Whereas, yeah.
Excuse me, is all this stuff in this book right here?
Yep.
Okay, okay. Because my memory, I don't know if I can catch it all at the end of the 4-hour tour here. So.
4-hour tour. I'll bring Ginger and Mary Ann in and they'll help.
3 hours. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah, Mary Ann from Wingfield, Kansas. Believe that or not. Stupid trivia. I don't know why I know it. I don't have a clue. But next thing we want to do is when we do this, rubs are so important when we're doing ribs. The way we apply the rub is so important when we do ribs. Unlike a brisket, we've got to be careful on how much we put on. We only have that much meat that we're really working with here. If we coat it really heavy with the heavy sugar rubs or heavy salt rub, guess what you're going to taste?
Sugar and salt.
Sugar and salt, absolutely. We want to taste the entire rib. And when you bite into it, you want to taste the rib, you want to taste the meat, you want to taste the smoke flavor, you want to taste the rub, you want to taste it all together. The art is not one thing dominates everything. Okay? You've got to be able to even out that flavor all the way across the board. That's when you're going to get that great rib. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to use the rubs. Of course, I make these. These are all championship rubs that my family's used for the last 15 years. We're going to do two different methods here. I'm going to use what they call the Memphis rub, which is basically, you can see the darker color. So it's going to be a brown sugar, cumin, pepper. We're also going to have a citric acid and powdered Worcestershire in this, so it gives it a great flavor, okay? But it's powdered, so that powder penetrates the meat better once we apply it, okay? And you'll see that when we do this. Now, when I put a rub on here, you notice one thing I'm not going to do to the rub is what? I'm not going to rub it. Because when I rub it, I start to break it down. It should be called a sprinkle, but that just in marketing terms, I couldn't market a sprinkle versus a rub. So does anybody know the difference between a rendezvous rib and a Kansas City rib? Rendezvous being out of Memphis?
Sauce.
Absolutely. And you know what we're going to do today? We're going to have a dry rib. We call them dries. We're going to try that. Now, would I ever enter a dry rib in a contest? No, I'd be hammered. But, you know, you're going to make that decision on, do I need to add sauce to these or not? Because, again, it's up to what you guys like. 95% of you aren't going to do competition. But I want you to try the dry rib.